So this is my quick agenda. I don't intend to talk more than 40 minutes and leave the last 20 minutes for Q&A. So I earnestly request if you have questions in between, just hold on till the presentation is done because I might answer your questions as we move in the presentation. So just hold on to those questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions in the last 20 minutes where we'll do Q&A. Okay. So, quick introduction about me. So, as Ida told, I'm a principal product manager and a part of a team called Gen AI Solutions. We predominate in Oracle Cloud, which is OCI. We focus on building solutions which are usable by the customer to derive business value and using or OCI's Gen AI services. I have been in this area of data AI and cloud technologies for the last 15 odd years, right? So prior to OCI, I was working with AWS, and before AWS, I had my time in Ernst and Young, Quantify, Cognizant, and HDFC Life. HDFC Life is one of the top Indian life insurers here in India. So have done like multiple roles, right from IT strategy and consulting, did a lot of GTM work, product management, and worked in India, US, and UAE. So yeah, I have like one good thing that I am like really proud of is that I have seen the perspective of from various sides of the table, from being in a OEM vendor like OCI and AWS. I know what it takes for a OEM vendor to like bring out the right services. Then I've also been in consulting, so I understand how customers look at business problem and how they look at solutions to help solve them. And then the good thing is that I have also been in HDFC Life, which is a large life insurer here in India. It's a joint venture between HDFC, which is a top financial services conglomerate here in India, and Standard Life Insurance of UK. So I have also been on the other side of the table. So I have really, gone ahead and did a lot of purchase decisions on before I actually came onto the side of the table, right? And I've like worked across the spectrum of data, I would say. So I started with data strategy, did a lot of data management, master data management, data governance, and then gradually moved into artificial intelligence. And as everybody is currently now, whoever is working on AI landed up in Gen AI, right? So that's like my quick profile. I'm happy to be here. Really excited. And please, if you have any questions, write down your questions. I'm going to answer like all of them. If I don't know the answer, which I may not know because after 15 years, I have realized that I only know like 15% of the whole thing. So I'll definitely find it out and get back to you. So before we get started, right, I was reading a very interesting report, which I think many of you must have already read. It is a report by McKinsey, which is goes by the name of State of AI in 2024, and they release it every year, right? And there are very interesting metrics that they spoke about, right? Like that Gen AI POCs are everywhere. So if you are from an enterprise who is doing it, or if you are a SaaS, product manager who has built their own product, I'm sure that whenever you are talking to your customers or Gen AI vendors are talking to you, you are definitely doing some POC or the other, right? And that is reflective of this in this report, right? Which basically told that there is like 65% of the organizations that they interviewed uh, told that they regularly use Gen AI in 2024, and this number was less than 35%. It was around 33% in 2023. So you can see that it has nearly doubled in 1 year. So Gen AI use cases in the form of pilots and POCs are omnipresent right now. Everybody is trying to do this, and that is a good thing, right? Because everybody is getting the start, everybody is starting it, right? And you can see that it is across the spectrum, right? Like most functions, be it sales and marketing, be it service development, product development, corporate IT, customer service, everywhere Gen AI is a very prevalent technology to be used, right? And then what is very interesting is, right, like when they ask like the spend that these customers are doing on Gen AI, So 33% of the organizations actually told that they are spending more than 5% of their digital technology budget on Gen AI and analytical AI, right? So which is like an offshoot of Gen AI, I can say, right? And the good thing is that if you look at tech industry, which is obviously like and it's not a surprise, right? But if you look at tech industry, like 53% of them are of the organizations are spending more than 5% of their data and of their digital analytics budget on Gen AI use cases. So definitely there is some spend that is coming in, and some of these organizations are spending more than 30-40% also, right? 5% is the bare minimum that I have taken. So as you can understand, Gen AI is already here. It's a technology that in my 15 years of career, I have seen that that has drawn the maximum interest from customers when we look at, right? So because I have seen, like when I started my career back in like 2010 or something like that, right, a little earlier than 2010, I means I have worked across, I have seen the big data wave, I have seen the Hadoop wave, I have seen the IoT wave, and the generic traditional computational analytics wave. But this is the first time that I'm seeing that a technology is having an impact that is cutting across industries, cutting across functions, and having a and getting the seriousness not only from the private sector but also from the public sector and everywhere, right? So this is a technology that has definitely, I would say maybe after like databases or after something like that, this is the next big thing that has happened, right? So this technology is here to stay, and this technology is here to grow. Now, but having said that, right, the problem is also real, right? That we often see, and this I'm saying from my own personal experience of doing multiple Gen AI POCs, pilots, projects, whatever you can call it. You can call it with multiple names depending upon how you see it, but what it basically means is starts. So we see a lot of these Gen AI projects getting started, but very few actually goes into production, right? And that is very important, and a very and a metric to double click on, because what is happening right now, right? And this is what is my personal opinion, is based on my personal experience of working in this area, right? So first thing that I have seen, and I have seen this more often than what it might seem, might seem true, is that most of the time enterprises are picking the wrong use case, to solve it through Gen AI. Sometimes the use case that they pick up, there is very easier ways to actually solve the use case to a level of acceptance, that is accepted by the business, right? But what is happening is that they're choosing Gen AI to solve a use case that probably could have been solved by traditional analytics or some other area of AI, right? Because what has happened, many enterprises are thinking that AI means Gen AI, but that is not true, right? Because before Gen AI was there was traditional AI that was there. There was the likes of natural language processing. There was like computer vision. There was like automated speech recognition, everything. Now those technologies are not suddenly become incapable, right? Just because Gen AI is there. So it is very important that we don't like select a use case that is a very wrong use case for Gen AI. And most enterprises are doing this. So what is happening is that because of this, they're starting the POC. They're understanding it halfway in the POC that it's not giving the outcome to an acceptable level that they want, and then they're like closing it down, right? The next problem that I see, right, is most enterprises are now taking a platform first approach, right? When I say platform first, what I basically mean is they are trying to select which who is going to be my vendor, what is going to be my technology first, and then they are trying to see if that platform can serve use cases. And this is also happening because See, Gen AI as a technology has taken everybody by big surprise, right? So what is happening in enterprises is most of the evaluations or most of the figuring out work, right, of Gen AI is being pushed to IT departments, and IT departments work in this way, right? They first set up the platform and then they say that, this is the platform that I have, which is like which is like a singular platform where you can do multiple use cases, and that is also something that is leading to a lot of POCs getting started, and it doesn't fit with the platform, and then the platform takes precedence because they have already invested in the platform, and then the POC actually doesn't see the light of the day, right? This is the second reason. The third reason is a very interesting reason, right? There is like, I'll tell you honestly, there is like too much of hype that is there right now, and that is leading to a lot of FOMO amongst business functions. When I was in like in my past job, right? I went to a very reputed business conglomerate here in India, and they are like, they are one of India's top 50 conglomerates in terms of not even top 50, top 10 conglomerates in terms of market capitalization, right? And then I was talking to their to one part of their business, right? And that is when the CIO actually told me, right, in confidence, right, that Ramanuj, see, the challenge that we are facing, because they were trying to do number one, they were trying to find out a use case and fit Gen AI into it when it was not the right use case to do. Then I asked him, like, why are you selecting this use case when it is not going to, see the light of the day? So then he told me, right, like, we are under tremendous pressure from the board that we have to deliver use cases on Gen AI, and each line of businesses are are basically competing within each other, which is like scary to me, which is good. But then if it is not like controlled beyond a certain level, it can become like a recipe for a lot of POCs that get started and never ends. Then another thing that I'm looking at is, right, the fourth one, right? Like, customers are today too obsessed with the models, right? We are too obsessed with the tools rather than the outcomes. Like, and that is very I would say very dangerous to have, because whenever you think of any other aspect of your life, right, you don't focus on the tool, you focus on the outcome, and then you think about what tool I need to get to there. But now, because there is so much of chatter or so much of news or bombardment of Gen AI, that people are too focused on the models. And the problem with this approach is that model is like an arms race. Like, it is never ending. Like, every 2 weeks we are getting a new model. We are already outdated with the old model. Like, I myself, despite being in this area, right, I cannot keep track of the models. I don't think any human can actually keep track of all and every aspect of this model. So this is not ending. So if you like one model today, and if you're too hung up with the model that I want to focus on this model, then you are just like, you're taking a very bottom up approach, I think. And then what happens is that you're losing sight of what the use case you are going to, where your outcomes is going to come, right? And businesses actually take projects to production where outcome delivers value. They don't take projects to production just because it is using a fancy tech, right? It doesn't happen that way. So that is something that is happening a lot in Gen AI. People are focused in the models. They are, putting in all their eggs in that model, and then suddenly after 1 month, 1.5 months, they have another model. So that, like, cycle never ends. Then they are going to that other model, and then they are going to the third model. Then yeah. So it's very important that you focus on the outcome and select the model that works for the outcome, period. And then you need to have a blinkered view, to be honest. Like, in this area, if you really want yourself to get through, you need to have a blinkered view that this is my use case, this is the outcome I'm looking at, and this is and I'm getting the outcome with this configuration of model, period. Don't worry about whether this model is like how many billion parameters, whether there is another model that is doing better or not. It doesn't matter. Like, so that is another thing that is leading to a lot of experimentation in Gen AI without actually seeing the light of the day. And finally, right, is a very critical point: underestimating the cost of Gen AI. I'm saying this because if you're doing a POC, right, most of the time your POC will be heavily discounted by your service providers, or just in the POC you don't have the volumes, so you really don't know, or you cannot really evaluate well that when you go into production, what is the cost you're going to bear. And another thing is there, since there is like so much of terminologies that is getting used loosely, people think that and whenever I talk to customers, right, I have seen this happen more often, right, that okay, I'm using this X model, if it doesn't work as per my requirement, I'm just going to fine tune that model. I said, okay, like that word fine tuning is very easy to say, but when people really put down the pen and paper and you figure out what is the cost of actually fine tuning a model, cost not only in the in terms of the money that you spend in training the model, but money and time that you take to get the data. So even if it is synthetic data you're using to get the whole work done, it's a huge cost in terms of human resources as well as actual capital expenditure, right? So that sometimes doesn't get estimated very well at the start of the POC. The POC gets started and then they realize that, oh my God, I've like not taken 10 things under budget. And then, then they realize that it's not like the budget is way too much, right? And then they shelve the budget. So I think these 5 pointers, right, are the biggest, I would say, biggest hindrances today that Gen AI projects are actually facing to go live right now. How do you actually solve this? How do you scale Gen AI then, right? One of the most important thing, right, is that focus on outcomes. See, at the end of the day, if you want to create business impact is measured by return on investment. The return on investment can be some cost savings, can be some additional revenue, but understand the outcome that this is going to drive. And it is very important that you need to understand the size of the outcome. This is a very critical concept that I want to like tell everyone, that when you're talking about size of the outcome, if you even if you select a good use case, right, which is a very good use case for Gen AI, it checks all the boxes, you get an output, right? But then even if it solves the problem, right, if that problem is not a sizable problem to solve for the enterprise, then despite checking all the boxes, it will not see scale. That is one way of looking at size. Second is, how do you look at like vertical depth in terms of size, right? So if you pick up a use case which has very limited users or very limited frequency of usage, and you solve it through Gen AI, until and unless that use case is super critical and super super important for the customer in terms of either risk management or just by the virtue of the impact it has, you will not going to like you know get a lot of scaling out there. Then next that I would want, like product managers and everybody who is doing Gen AI, right, is to focus on solutions. Don't focus on the service, don't focus on the model, don't focus on anything. Focus on the solution that you are trying to bring to the table, right? And the solution, if 100 is the solution, there is a chance that Gen AI is only 20 of it. The remaining 80 can be data, remaining 80 can be like pipelines, the remaining 80 can be Gen AI ops, remaining 80 can be like a lot of other things, right? So when I'm talking about solutions, Gen AI might be only 20, 30, 40% of it, and make peace with it, right? Because sometimes we don't want to make peace with it as product managers who are building Gen AI products, or product managers who are helping implement Gen AI implementations, right? Because we want to do Gen AI, but and then when we figure out that we are building a solution where Gen AI is part of it, then we might not get a intellectual boost that we generally look at. But then I think we should be okay with it, because whatever I have learned means whatever I means, in the last 15 years, what I have realized one thing is, right, when things become boring, that is when it starts generating returns, right? You look at the larger organizations, the Fortune 50s and the Fortune 10s, like most of them are like they have been doing one thing very well and doing it continuously. So focus on the solution, even if it is not like full Gen AI. Let's focus on that. Then the third point which I would want to call upon is, especially for people who are building Gen AI products, and if they're trying to think like how they can scale Gen AI products, right? It's important that you focus on products that are replicable, right? Replicable across industries and functions. Because if you are building a solution or a Gen AI, uh, Gen AI solution that is very pointed, right? Then you should, means you are okay to build up a very pointed solution. It has its own merits, but then you should do that after carefully considering and make an educated choice that you're doing that, right? Otherwise, if you're looking at only scaling, you should look at solutions that are replicable across, horizontally replicable across industries, or it is applicable to multiple functions within the same org. And then what I think what I told in the past year, focus on the use case, right? Like if your use case is getting solved by a model, by a smaller model, don't worry about some fancy large model that everybody is talking about. It is not important to use a large model. It is important to solve your use case. And if you solve the use case, because once the use case gets solved, it has any business impact. And if people see that business impact, they will be willing to take that solution into production and then operationalize it. And that is how you get scale, right? Because at the end of the day, you want the solution to not only go into production and then operationalize it. It needs to be like, it needs to be part of the daily operations, right? That is where you want to get to, right? And you can only get through to it by solving real life use cases that the business is facing. And don't worry about what model does it. In fact, the if this you should actually focus on the smallest model that gives you that, because there is a lot of advantages of using smallest model, right? Like technical advantages and there, right? Then a very important thing in scaling Gen AI, right? See, Gen AI is a technology which many understand, but few really understand well. I don't know if you have if any of you have played that game called Othello, where we'll have to just like put one black and one there are coins with one black side and one white side, and you want to like cross over from one black to the other box, and if the coin in between is white, it gets flipped to black. So there it has a very interesting say, right, that it takes a minute to learn but a lifetime to master. So that is a very critical thing, right? Like Gen AI right now, everybody knows, everybody understand, but people are also understanding but also misunderstanding it, right? So it is important that if you are enterprise leaders, or if you are talking to enterprise leaders, right, try to select use cases which you can win quickly, and win the first few. Put in that non-linear effort to win the first few. And the non-linear effort is needed from both sides, right? Like from the service provider side and also from the customer side. Because uh, because everybody has to, like, this is a new thing, so customer also needs to be more accepting, and service provider also needs to like put in more effort to get it right. But it is important because that will help you build the trust that you need to actually scaling multiple Gen AI use cases within the same organization. See, when you are scaling Gen AI, right, you can also scale within the same organization. Today, we have a lot of Gen AI use cases in HR, legal, customer service, product management, marketing, everything, right? So if you do one or two of these use cases very well in the organization, that builds trust in the technology, builds trust in the roadmap of multiple other use cases, right? So and once you build that trust, right, then if you go wrong on, well, like by mistake, if you go wrong on your fourth use case, right, it's okay, but don't go wrong in your first two use case. That is very critical, right? And another important thing that is, this is like the last one, is more focused towards enterprise leaders, is right, or even if you are like a service provider, right, you need to be focused on change management. See, while AI has been there for quite some time, right? The traditional or the classical AI, be it statistical AI, or be it deep learning based AI, that has been there for some time, right? But since Gen AI has come in, it has become like uh, it has moved from, I would say, it has become a boardroom conversation right now, right? And when it becomes a boardroom conversation, right, it also leads to a lot of concerns, right? Like concerns across the strata of the organization, right? There will be risk management concerns. There will be people who are who are concerned about whether AI is going to have an impact on the roles that they are doing, etc. There are multiple concerns that AI brings to the table, and you cannot, and it is important that it is managed extremely professionally and extremely well, because what is happening is that most of these concerns is happening because of misinformation, or I would say half-baked information that is floating around, because people are reading everywhere and people are assimilating what they want to assimilate, right? There is no control over it. So it is important that when you are trying to scale Gen AI in an organization, you seriously focus on change management, explain what use cases AI is going to solve, how they are solving it, what role a human is playing in that, right? And also like how you are managing the risks that AI bring in, what are the controls that you are putting in, and it needs to, like, everybody needs to work together. If even if customer service is building a use case, like your audit has to work together, your legal team has to work together, like, right, your IT has to work together. It's a combined effort, right? It's a collaborative effort. So change management is extremely important, right? So like these 6 pointers, right, are extremely critical when you think of how can you actually scale AI, right? Or scale Gen AI in this particular parlance, right? So I am nearly towards the end of my yeah, but I'll just end it with this very interesting slide that I will have, like, because I know that many of the audience here is either product managers or trying to become a product manager or like dealing with product managers. So it's very important that when you think of Gen AI product, how can you build a scalable Gen AI product, right? The first line is extremely important, that understand your customer's business. Many times we think that AI is business is like something that I understand, right? And but trust me, I have worked in life insurance for good 2.5, 3 years. And when I was working with life insurance, right, there are like multiple of these processes that we don't realize. The outsider will never realize that, like, between the time you actually sign up a proposal and the company evaluates your risk and the policy is issued, there are like five processes that is going on, and very complicated processes, right? So every business has its own complications, and it is very important that as a product manager, when you are trying to build a product for targeted towards a customer, you understand the customer's business as best as you can. And how can you understand? I'm not expecting, or it is not actually feasible for anybody to understand at that depth until and unless you have really experienced it, right? Like people who have worked in the bank, they will say that even if you're doing a simple credit transaction, there are like 5 entries that I have to do in journals, I have to do this, that. So it has its own complexities, right? So when you're building as a product manager or as an organization who is building Gen AI products, invest in the right talent, invest in time and on getting these customers, people who can understand the business, because the tech is easier, the business is always difficult. Many times people think that the tech is difficult, right? And this I'm telling you from a very personal experience that I have, right? So when I was moving from HDFC Life and I moved to Cognizant, right, and I joined a practice called Master Data Enterprise Data Management, which basically did engagements in master data management and data governance. And I didn't have any clue about what master data management or MDM is. Basically, I just read it up the day before the interview and I landed up in the interview, right? And like one good thing that happened, and I should really like thank my interviewer out there, is that I upfront told the interviewer, see that I am not an MDM expert. And the interviewer told me a very interesting thing, that that uh, that really was very eye opening to me at that point of time, right? So he told me that I don't want to hire you for your MDM knowledge. MDM I'll teach you. I want to hire you for your insurance knowledge. So if you can answer some insurance questions, that will be very good. And then after that, that ended up me getting into like MDM, solution consultant role with zero MDM knowledge. After that, obviously, the tech was easier to pick up, right? Because when you're talking to the customer's business, it is important that you get the right people on board who can understand the business and understand understand the unsaid things by the customer, because if you understand the business, you can probe the customer better and you can figure out unsaid things that are challenges in the customer, which can create the trust very quickly. Then when you're building a product, right, understand that there is diversity in the in similar customers. The customers are similar. Like if you're talking to 5 banks, all the banks are basically doing the same thing. They are taking deposits at X percentage and lending it out at X plus Y percentage and making money from that delta of Y, right? That's banking business in one line, period. There is no rocket science in banking business. It's just, borrowing money and lending money and pocketing the differential. But in all this, this thing, right? There is a lot of nuances that even two banks of the same size in the same geography, who are competitors in each other in the same market, will have nuances, right? So make your product as modular as possible, which can be easily configured, which has the right set of connectors, or where connecting is very easy, because this is a very trivial thing it looks like, but when actually implementation, it comes to implementation, there is a lot of challenges with that, right? Then you should also focus on building a product that is technologically robust, right? Like, because see, when you're doing building a product with Gen AI, there is going to be a lot of questions on security. There will going to be a lot of questions on risk management. How do you ensure that the model is not hallucinating? What is your controls that you have? And all these things. And infrastructure is also a big limitation in today's world, right? Like, whether your model runs in this GPU, which GPU you need, which is your best GPU. So ensure that the product is as technologically robust as possible. Obviously, there will be dependencies, I can understand, but make it as technologically robust as possible, right? And then finally understand the risks of what you're trying to build, right? So Gen AI is a new technology, look, and like there is perceived risks of usage, right? So and every organization have different risk appetite, and also within an organization also the risk appetite is different depending upon which functions you are talking, right? If you're talking to a particular function which has a very high impact on on the customer's brand, there will be a lot of risk appetite in that, right? So understand these nuances while you are trying to build the product. And I think if you take this forward, this is something that, as I told, which I felt from my own experiences. Obviously there can be multiple. If you can get this for right, I'm sure that you will get, and you focus on these 6 areas of how you can actually look at problem solving. I think most of your Gen AI solutions will be very much scalable, and you'll be able to achieve good scale. Even if you are even if you're a consumer of Gen AI, you can scale it across your enterprise. If you're a service provider of Gen AI, you can scale it in your customers enterprise, and you'll see like good value for both sides, right? So with that, I've like consumed 40 minutes of my time, and that's the end of it. For From a presentation perspective, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I hope it was something meaningful and something helpful, right? So that's all from my side in terms of presentation perspective.
Thank you, Ramanuj. That was very insightful. Um, Appreciate the you sharing your experiences over the years, particularly helping companies launch AI products, Gen AI products. We do have a few questions, but just a reminder to everybody, feel free to raise your hand on Zoom, put it in the chat, and if you're on LinkedIn, you can go ahead and put it in the comments and I'll pick it up there. We've got one in the chat, but I'll take a live one from Chitali. You've raised your hand. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is a very interesting discussion. My question is, when we are talking about the audits, right? So how frequently the things are getting audited, and what are the things you are actually considering while the Gen AI audits in production? And of course, from the change management perspective also, I mean, I know it varies from use case to use case, but how the things are getting handled. I mean, are you using any kind of observability platform and then tracking to the governance practices, or how it is? I mean, what is the process of the entire
Yeah.
thing?
Okay. So I'll answer the audit question first. See, generally, whenever there is an audit, right, audit is more, they will audit a function or a process, process, right, at the end of the day. And if it is a process audit, I'm not talking about the financial audit, right? And in that process, if you're using Gen AI, right, then obviously, you know, when an auditor comes, right, and I have like handled a couple of audits when I was with HDFC, is that when an auditor comes, right, basically what they are looking at is the implementation that you have put in place, right? Do you, as an owner of that implementation, understand first of all, where things can go wrong, and do you have requisite mechanisms to manage that risk, right? Like the auditor understands that there will be some risks that is there, but what he's looking at, or he or she is looking at, is that whether you know what the risk is, right? So similarly, in a Gen AI kind of a project, it is important to figure out that when you are doing an implementation, right, understand where can the models go wrong. Is hallucination a problem? Yes, it can be a problem. How can you control it? What are the checks and balances that you have put in place, right? And then what you should also use very and most AI engineers don't like it, or even business users also question this. You should use human in the loop as much as possible, because see, AI is still, at the end of the day, or Gen AI you can talk about, is at the end of the day a probabilistic decision making process. It's not deterministic. It is at the very heart of it, it is still probabilistic, right? So, and there will be errors. If you think that it is going to be like all the boxes checked every time you run it through, it is not going to happen. So have a human in the loop. If your process is very, very critical, right, that you don't want even a, you don't want like mistakes to go through, have a human in the loop. But if your use case is internal facing, where the outcome of the use case is getting used by another function within the organization, there you might choose not to have a human in the loop, right? But understand the risk appetite of the process, understand where Gen AI can go wrong, document the and ensure that you are able to identify when it goes wrong and what steps you have to take it, and there should be proper documentation of all those things. That is how I think you focus on when you're when you're handling audit. There was a second question. Sorry, I've forgotten the second question. If you can repeat, Chetali.
Yeah, so what I understand is anyway, the thing starts from risk and then having necessary controls in the entire Gen AI product life cycle. And when the audit happens, specifically, it's not the normal process audit, but an AI audit. And then it is actually getting traced back to what are the controls being implemented across the
Yes.
Gen AI life cycle, and is the risk being mitigated or how it is being handled. So
Mm.
this I got, but then for that we need to have a observability tool, right, to track the matrix and then tied it back to the probably the regulatory checks what are there, so that the
Yeah.
entire thing is
So there
stitched
are
together.
right. There are multiple tools. Specifically, means purposefully, I'm not using the any name of any tools here today.
Mm-hmm.
But there are multiple of these tools that are available where you can track observability. You can, like, models that you have deployed. You can show performance of the model. You can show how the model has performed on test data, etc. So there are a lot of checks and balances from tool perspective that is today available, that you can use it and incorporate it in the actual implementation, right? Which will give more confidence to the auditors.
Are you using any tool for AI governance? Last question.
Sorry, I'm not naming any tools, unfortunately here.
Yeah, thank.
Okay. Yeah.
Perhaps something you can reach out to Ramanuj individually on. To Telly. Vicky has posted a question, Ramanuj, and it is, what are some security and infrastructure limitations that inhibit scaling a product? Some examples.
Yeah, security. See, there are multiple of these ISO, the requirements that are necessary for some of the use cases. If you're implementing something in payments, you have like PCI DSS, the multiple governances and everything that is needed, right? So, and you need it to be authorized at various level, infrastructure level, etc. So security is something that is like job zero of, I think, every organization, and you can focus on. When I said about infrastructure limitations, right? See, when you are doing a Gen AI product, right? Understand that infrastructure today is available at a extremely high cost and low availability. And when I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm talking about the GPUs it will run on, etc. Right? It's not that they are lying around everywhere. So if anybody is trying to procure a GPU, it's extremely costly, and even if they get their hands on, means there is low chances of getting your hands onto it, right? So have models or have the solutions as robust as possible, because if you are only depending upon one type of infrastructure to run your product, for example, you need a particular GPU with a particular you know memory to run your product, then that will become a challenge as you scale, right? Because the GPUs are not available uniformly across the world, number one. And secondly, right, wherever they are also available, it's not like they're available easily. So infrastructure today, especially infrastructure on which GenAI runs, is a scarce resource at this point of time. So ensure that your solution is using that resource optimally and making the best use of it. Okay. Any other questions anywhere, right?
Yeah, Vicky, thank you for your answer and a few others. There's a comment about hosting foundation models being costly. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Hosting, yeah, that again, I told you, right? It's all dependent upon which foundational model you are trying to pick up. There is like many now. Now, if you're picking up a foundational model that uh, only I'm talking about hosting right now. I'm not talking about fine tuning, right, Chaitanya? I'm just focusing on hosting. So if you pick up a model that requires a particular GPU to host, and if that GPU is costly, it is going to be costly, and most of the GPUs are costly, and costly because of because of the because of the availability issues. The second is also these are very high power and cooling consumption consuming uh, chips. So you can go ahead and it will be costly, right? But having said that, there is obviously optimized way of doing it, right? Like OCI does a lot of things optimized way, but there is obviously we can talk at length on that area. Fine tuning obviously will be much more costlier than hosting, because if you are fine tuning, you're actually playing around with the weights and everything of that model. It will be much more costlier, but then fine tuning is a very advanced way of using Gen AI. There are five other things that you can actually do before moving to fine tuning with your large language models, right? So you can do RAG, which is like much easier than trying to fine tune it. You can provide in context learning. There is a lot of the other things that you can do it. But fine tuning might become obviously more costlier than hosting, obviously.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions for Ramanuj? I'm just going to check LinkedIn in the meantime. Ramanuj, any final comments on your end?
No, I think this was really interesting and great to talk to all uh, fellow enthusiasts of Gen AI. I know this is a very it's a topic that that you can really keep on talking but still not get to a conclusion. So really happy to be here and share whatever knowledge I have. Most common challenges with building a scalable AI customer service chatbot. Very basic question, I know. Okay. No, I think it's not a basic question because this is a top use case generally that I'm seeing across for Gen AI. So if you're uh, see, challenges, you might face multiple challenges, first of all, right? One is what you are trying to do with that bot, right? Are you trying to automatically respond to each and every question, whether it is a chat based bot, whether it is a voice based bot? All these things has an implication. What challenge? But instead of challenge, right, what I'll request is like focus on what is the best way to get value out of this. So if you are doing a customer service Gen AI implementation and you want to get the maximum value out of it, right? I think focus on, what is the biggest challenge in a customer service scenario, right? One is your customer calls are a gold mine of voice of customer that today with traditional approaches you are not able to mine, right? Because your customers are calling you and telling you feedback, which is maybe good or bad about your product. The agent hears it, solves it, wherever it is solvable, wherever it is not solvable, it is lying around in some recorded call or some transcript, etc. Right? So the biggest thing, the most impactful thing that you can do with Gen AI first is that if you have call recordings, right, use an ASR service, convert it into transcripts, run those transcripts to Gen AI, identify top challenges that your customer is talking about, use those challenges to improve your product, improve other aspects of your service, right? This is something that you can do async, right? You don't have to do any like real time synchronization. All this data is already lying around. And if you are a B2C organization, right, where customer service is a very important thing, I'm pretty sure most of the organizations will have some amount of customer call records already available, right? So that is one way of starting that use case, right? Second is, what if you want to do like real time transcripts? As soon as the chat finishes, you want to do a quick transcript of the chat, you can go ahead and do that. You can also use Gen AI to enable the agent to go ahead and find information faster, etc. So I think when you look at the challenges aspect, right, first is figure out the roadmap of how do you want to implement this use case, because this is not one use case, it's multiple use cases you'll implement. Identify the use cases that are easy to solve and has an impact, and sometimes the impact might be little hidden. So it'll make sense to like help your businesses also to find the impact in a constructive way, right? And that's how you can get started, I think. And then there will, like, obviously you can like scale it up from there. How can we help ease the fear of feeding IP to Gen AI? Okay, I'm not an expert in that. Maybe feeding IP means you mean intellectual property. Okay, okay. Feeding. Okay, are they concerned about their IP getting into the models well, knowledge base? So if that is the concern, see, means I can talk about OCI, what we are doing currently, right? Whenever we are implementing any customer use cases in OCI today, there is like absolutely no pilferage of information from one customer's OCI tenancy to another customer's OCI tenancy, because Oracle itself is a database organization. We have been dealing with Fortune 50's databases. So you can understand how focused and serious are we about security, right? In our Gen AI services also, we have built it in such a way that it doesn't get from one to another. We have something called as dedicated AI clusters, where the model actually runs within the customer's OCI tenancy, and that model is not shared. The model is only for customer X. So that is how we achieve a lot of these, we help answer a lot of these concerns, that how is my IP getting out? Because your IP is not getting out because that model is not getting, it's not a shared model. It's not an API call that you are doing to that model with your data and getting the responses, right? It's not that. The model is built for you, or rather the model is running in your tenancy solely for your use case. And if you have fine tuned it, obviously you are using a specialized version of that model. So that is one way of doing it. Pawan, I can't answer that question. Like I told, right, start from the use case. It doesn't matter which model is better. The model needs to be, your use case needs to get solved. It doesn't matter whether the model is better or not. I have seen an organization in India which is basically solving customer use cases with small SMLs, small language model SLMs, right? And you can also see that there's a lot of focus now on SLMs coming up, because people have realized that LLMs, while it is like big bazooka, right? But sometimes when you are like, if you're on the battlefront and if you're the sniper, you need the quietest of the weapons in the which no one sees, and you can get your job done. So focus on the use case. Don't worry about the model. Doesn't matter. There will be, everybody is trying to build models, and there will be like model after model that is coming up in December, January, February. You can't stop that. Okay. Any other questions, Ida?
I'm not seeing any on my end. If there are, let's just give it 30 seconds for anybody else if they want to throw something in the chat or jump in right now. Oh, it seems like that's it. Thank you so much, Ramanuj. Thank you for sharing all your insights and sharing your experiences, like I said, with companies trying to launch these and scaling Gen AI. So appreciate the talk. For everyone who joined us, if you haven't already taken the product manager, the AI product manager learning program at PM Exercises, please do so. The next cohort starts January 13th in 2025. So kick off 2025 with learning more about Gen AI, choosing your models, and a lot more about avoiding the pitfalls that Ramanuj has pointed out in his presentation. And also, you can join us next week. It is our last community session for 2024. It's going to be about AI agents in healthcare. Bimal Maharjan is running that one. He's the founder of GutSphere, which is a company in the health tech space and using AI. So very excited for that talk. But thank you again, Ramanuj. It's been an absolute pleasure. We really enjoyed the conversation. And everybody enjoy your weekend as it comes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good rest of the
Thank you.
week. Yeah.
So hi there, my name is Kevin. I'm a product manager at a company called Vicasa. Really, I've had some exposure to AI and ML products in my professional life, and really I joined the AI ML cohort to get a better understanding of like the end-to-end AI ML product development cycle. So yeah, really appreciate the cohort. It's helped me a lot in product decision making, and yeah, much appreciated.